Our event today is about powering up for success, inclusive and dynamic country-led evaluations.
Let's begin with that first question. How can we harness the power of evaluation for country-led evaluations?
One of the main things we have started working on is to have a policy, an M&E policy. We're actually developing an ICT-based monitoring and evaluation system. It is, apart from the automation and digitizing, the idea is to have real-time information from citizens.
We have set up the M&E guideline, and which we introduced to Line 3 just to follow this M&E guideline, which we can follow and we can see the achievement, especially the need of data. And now we are on the process to formulate our M&E strategy.
And I'll pick a few points. One of these is the legal framework. So in Uganda, we already have the national M&E policy for the public sector, and it clearly defines the institutional framework and responsibilities for different bodies, beginning from the executive side and up to parliament. The other one is the institutional framework in terms of where does M&E lie. So the office of the Prime Minister is properly catered for as the national office that coordinates the efforts of M&E in the country.
And here, to me, really the crux of the issue is the use part. I think we have for a long time now, with the result-based management tradition, established systems, produced data, produced evidence, etc. But the use part is still the weak link. So when we think about evaluation for the SDG, I think putting use at the core of how we build this system is important.
We need to decide what to evaluate in terms of the different levels of what you can what evaluations that you can carry it out. For example, you have your national development plan, you have your government plan. So how that government plan or development plan is coherent with the 2030 agenda? That is the first question. The second question, the second level, will be how that plan is going to be related to systems, budgeting systems, ministries, ministry plans, etc., and etc. And in the third level, you can find, for example, programs and projects that each ministry is implementing. So you have three levels. So following this idea, are we going to have evaluation systems that are going to be addressing all these three levels? Or are we only going to be focused on plans and programs? Or are we going to be focused on budgeting too?
What are the key success factors for SDG evaluations to be credible and inclusive?
The SDGs, the reporting structure and also the evaluation that you are carrying out cannot be separated from the existing structures that you have in your country.
We have in Uganda what we call barazas. These are community advocacy groups where we pick out a specific area, and the Office of the Prime Minister organizes a sitting like this, where we bring stakeholders in terms of service providers, the politicians, and the beneficiaries in a community to share what has worked and what has not.
Is there anything missing? What's the missing pieces of the puzzle for successful SDG evaluations to make sure that evaluations do inform the implementation of the agenda and the VNRs?
Another key success factors could be the agreement, because the 2030 agenda is not owned by a government, right? It's not owned by civil society. It's not owned by the private sector. It is a society-wide agenda. So the agreement of what to evaluate and how to evaluate the processes that we are going to take into account, that agreement should be done in a multi-stakeholder view.
Embeddedness. I would really not want to see just yet another parallel system that we call SDG evaluation, and with a separate unit or separate set of processes only for measuring that target, etc. I think it's in the spirit of the SDG. It needs to be sustained, embedded, and owned by all the stakeholders within the country.
I'll start with the political will and commitment. And an example from Uganda, we have a minister designate for SDGs. And our parliament has a chapter for Africa Parliamentary Network on Development Evaluation, APNOD. And of course, we have also efforts like the Global Parliamentarians Forum that is focusing on where power is, and the people can actually use this evaluation to influence change. And another important one I can't go without mentioning is the Gender and Equity Certificate. So this is about who has been left behind. Every year we produce the State of Equal Opportunities report, and the Equal Opportunities Commission will pull out which groups have been ignored, which services have left out some people, and so we think this is a good journey towards realization of SDGs.
How we can incorporate qualitative data into monitoring evaluation is important, and that's the one that I think we lack of, and I think we need to go directions in some of the data that is not really easy to collect.
If we are to move forward in terms of the power evaluation, we have to be more dynamic. Are we driving the power fast enough for the 2030 agenda? That's certainly something that we have to consider as we move forward.